Good evening. Let me welcome you to this evening's presentation of Mango Tree Dialogues, a forum in which we discuss the issues of the day, which I'm sure are of importance to you, as they definitely are to me. I hope you had a good day, or at least your day was as good as you could have made it. And I'm very happy that you decided to join with me under the mango tree this evening. As I know there are many other forums or fora in which you can get your news. And the fact that you decided to join with me makes me very grateful to you for doing so. All right, first things first. The issue of the Hurricane Beryl, that barreled its way through the Caribbean. You know, a lot of devastation that took place in the smaller islands, in the Leewards and Windward Islands in the Caribbean, and then on to Jamaica. It did a lot of damage, especially on the south coast of the island. Buildings were, well, people lost their roofs on their buildings. Thank God there were just about, I think, 2 people who lost their lives. But it has upended the whole economic livelihood of people on the southern part of the island, especially in South St. Elizabeth and South Manchester, which, as you know, are the breadbasket areas of the country. The authorities have sought to restore electricity to areas where the power went down, of course, and the whole telecommunication system in many of these areas are also down. The internet is very spotty in many of these areas. So yes, we urge people to be patient, but when you don't have light for 2-3 days and your stuff is spoiling in the refrigerator, you know what that means. So while people may be called upon to be that patient, then we have to also understand that people are going through very difficult times. And so we urge the authorities to do whatever is best within their powers to make sure that people are brought back online and their lives can resume as best as they can make it. Then, of course, this storm continued to Mexico in the Cancun region and ended up in the Gulf in Texas, areas like Brownsville and Corpus Christi. Those areas, it went there as a category 1 because even coming across the landmass, Jamaica, Cancun, and going back into the Gulf, the ocean has been heating so much that it regained strength and hit another landmass miles away as a category 1. So, this calls into question, or at least into consideration, the whole matter of climate change, the heating of the planet. I don't think that over the past, I would say 10 years, but especially over the past 10 years, that anybody should have any doubt in their minds that this idea or this phenomenon, let me put it that way, of climate change, of the heating of the planet, is really something that one should really be taking more serious consideration of. I don't think any well-thinking person would disavow that. And yet, there are still many climate deniers. They deny the science that talks about the heating of the planet. And they do so to protect their own agenda. In the United States, for example, the big corporate companies, especially the oil companies, they don't seem to think that they ought to be restrained in the drilling of oil and the production of carbon fuels. They don't seem to think, let me put it that way, that their activities are contributing to the heating of the planet. And so there is that resistance. And unfortunately, one of the major political parties, the Republican Party, has bought into that notion. And as a matter of fact, has promised that if they should regain the White House, they've already been making promises to the big oil companies that they would be allowing, unrestrained, almost unrestrained drilling of oil. So the coming together that one would expect of the world in the context of this existential crisis is not something that has seized many people. Those in authority and citizens will have to become more activistic and make their voices known, not just at the ballot box, but out there, protesting. Especially, again, I'm going to say it, young people, because the future is yours. You cannot exist on the planet, as the scientists have said, if we should reach a 1.5 degree of heating. And we are almost on the cusp of that, from what I understand, a point of no return. I sometimes wonder if some of these people who are against climate change and who are into the denial of the science around climate change really have children or grandchildren, and the kind of future that they're consigning them to, the discomfort. Look how hot it is. Every year it gets hotter. For the past 5 years, every year has been getting hotter and hotter and hotter. There are places now that are experiencing over 100 degrees temperature. And these are not indexes, these are actual temperatures. We've never had it like this last year. So something is going on. And I don't think it is just natural. It is induced by human activity. And yet it is not something that is grabbing people's attentions. And let me say something else as I'm on this. I have a very strong feeling that the tilting of the world towards authoritarianism is going to, if it takes place to the extent that people want it to, that we're going to have a very serious, we're not going to have the kind of coming together of the minds of political leaders around the world to deal with this crisis. That is the thing that I don't hear anybody really talking or probably making that linking. Probably people are, but I haven't heard it. That there's a direct correlation between the heating of the planet and authoritarian impulses, where people don't listen to other people's viewpoints and they just do their own thing. And the tendency of the far right is always to do that which is negative to the environment. That's what I have noticed over the years. For example, if the Republican Party should get back into power in this country, in the US, what do you think is going to happen? You think they're just going to be all of a sudden converted to the idea that we must have restrictions placed on the things that are being done to the environment because of the corporate greed? You think they're going to put any cap on that? They're going to put a lid on that? I don't think so. And when you look at China and Russia, two of the countries with the biggest carbon footprints, bigger than Godzilla's. They're not at the table. And you put in Trump in November, and you think he's going to be at the table? One of the first things he did when he became president was to withdraw America from the most far-reaching international engagement on the climate, the Paris Accords. You remember that? Pulled America out of it. And now he has promised, drill, baby, drill. And that, frankly, is one of the most important reasons that he should not be allowed to see the White House, other than when he's driving past it. And the Republican Party must be kept out of power at this time of existential crisis in the climate. Because if they have control in the Congress, they're not going to be open to do the kind of regulations, the kind of legislation that we need to restrain these kind of appetites that are causing the environment to get more and more unlivable. So we've got to be concerned, in saying this about the totalitarian powers. Ever so often you see a kind of glimmer of hope. Because look at the election in France, where Macron's party was going to be trounced. As a matter of fact, in the first round of voting for the parliamentary elections, his party was trounced by the far right. And in the second round, the left, just talk about swinging from the right to the left. I know you're seeing it another way, the directions. But what a swing it was. That now they're in a conundrum as to how they're going to form a government. Right on the heels or the cusp of the Olympics taking place there in a short while. So the far right was turned back. And in Britain, the conservatives, who tend to be somewhat far right, well, I wouldn't say far right, but right, on the right side of the politics, they too were turned back and the Labour Party won. So I see a little glimmer of hope there, but it is not enough to overcome the gathering tide of the authoritarian impulses that can turn back any gain at all that has been made in dealing with the climate. But so much for that. I wish the people of the Caribbean, especially of my Jamaican family and friends, all the very best as they recover from one of the most devastating hurricanes starting so early. We've never had a hurricane starting that early. In June, Category 5, before it hit the Lesser Antilles, and then continuing all the way across, ending up as a Category 1, still a hurricane, so early in the season. So we wish you all the very best as you try to recover. Pray God's blessings on your efforts. All right, so certainly the climate change thing was one of the things on my mind, but significantly, the question again goes back to Mr. Biden. He has been in the news, and that is not going away. And the consideration of the Democratic Party as to whether he should bow out at this time or not. Well, Mr. Biden has, we have commented on this on the last presentation we had a fairly comprehensive look at the issue, but the issues are going away, and you may be wearied by you know us by me having to talk about it. You hear it as you turn on the television. You go to CNN Biden, and you go to MSNBC Biden, you go to this one Biden, you go to that one Biden. Now you come to Mango Tree Dialogues Biden. But friends, you're gonna hear this all the way up to elections in November, because we are fully now into what they call the silly season, the political season. Not even waiting until September the 2nd to kick off anything. No, we're fully into it. And this whole question of Mr. Biden's competency to persist in being the person to run against Donald Trump is a very real one. It is not something to be dodged. It is not something that one can wish away. You know, when I listen to people talk, especially those that are immediately around the president, those who are in the kitchen cabinet, those who are his close friends and advisors, one of the things that they keep pointing to is the 4 years that he has done. Look what he has done. And I have, as I said in my last piece, I have no problem at all. Mr. Biden has been the most honest, civil, productive president in our lifetime, I would say. Certainly in mine. Now I'm getting up there. He has done so much to restore the economy that today the economy is going, what they would say, gangbusters. The Dow, the S&P, the Nasdaq, all of these indices on the stock market are just moving. Job situation has improved tremendously. And so many other things. We talked about them last time. Just go back to that presentation, last Tuesday's presentation, and you'll see a catalog of some of the things. I don't want to repeat myself or to repeat them here. I don't want to weary. But the point I'm making is that Mr. Biden, from all angles you look at it, has been a successful president. There is, even his worst detractors have to admit that. But there's a problem. When I hear the Republican Party, for example, talking about the last 4 years, the 4 years are gone. He had the competency, both physically and mentally, to forge his way through over those 4 years to do what he did. So that is never in doubt. But the fact that you were able to perform so illustriously 4 years ago, when you were in your late 70s, and to proceed to think that you are able to perform just the same way in the next 4, when to many people in this country you're showing signs of age decline, let me put it that way. Because I have no reason, no fact to say that you have cognitive issues of a medical nature that should preclude you from being president. So I want to be factual. That has not been seen yet. I'll come back to that. But the fact that you have performed so well then isn't a guarantee that it is going to happen like that or even better in the next 4 years. For many people, especially young people, they don't want to be looking through the rear view mirror to what was. They're looking at what is to come. And many of them, as the polls suggest, whether you agree with the polls or not, but they have been very consistent in showing that a large section of the population, insofar as the samples, whatever samples they use and the data that was collected, that close to 70% of the people think that you should not run on the basis of age. And in recent times, just recently, Mr. Biden reinforced in the minds of many of those people who thought that way, that indeed he should not run. We saw the debate. And since then, he has done interviews and a few things to ingratiate himself back to the people in a way that to gain some acceptability. He had the interview with Stephanopoulos of ABC fame. Very interesting interview. But Stephanopoulos asked him, I can recall 3 times he asked the question, would you be willing to subject yourself to a medical evaluation to show to the American people that you're capable of being an effective president in the next 4 years? He said, Biden just said, listen, I am being tested every day. Stupid answer, really. And what he means by that is that because he referred to a few things. Look at me on the world stage. Look at me getting jobs for people. Look at me doing all of these things. Again, going back to the past, which is no guarantee that this is how you're going to operate in the future. What do they say when you're buying stocks and so on? One of the disclaimers that they have to put out is that past performance is not an indication of future performance. And that is so. Well, you performed yesterday, tomorrow, today you did well yesterday, and today you. So I asked him that question. And there was never a straight answer other than dancing the cha-cha around it. So we never had an answer to that. And I know that people like Pelosi had suggested that there should be some medical evaluation. I don't know where she is of both candidates. And last week we said that there should be that too, of both of them. And if one does not want to do it and the other does it, then that tells a story, doesn't it? But why we want to have that done? And listen to me very carefully, friends, because let me just quickly say, that I am firmly in Biden's corner. You might not pick it up. You may think that that is not the case from what I've been saying. But I need to say it, that I'm firmly in Biden's corner. And that is precisely why I am suggesting, along with many others, that he really re-examines. He's digging in his heels now and saying that he is able to do it. And perhaps he can. Perhaps he can. But we have seen certain things that continue to justify in the minds of 70 to 80% since the debate that he's showing certain declines in mental capacity or physical capacity in the slurring of his speech, which we know he has had a speech impediment. It seems to get worse as he gets older. You notice that now that when he speaks, and I know that's not his fault. I mean, but it is what it is. What we want to know is that he's able to do it, and soon enough, before it is too late, and Trump gets into power by default. You notice how silent he and his camp are? You have not heard a peep out of them about the troubles in the Democratic Party. They don't want to stir up anything because they really want to run against Biden because they think they have a chance against Biden, especially since Trump's performance against him, where Biden made Trump look respectable at the debate. They want to run against him. They don't want a young, sprightly person jumping out there because they know the difference between age now and strength and competence. And I believe that you have good Democrats, as I mentioned the last time, out there who can really carry the day against Trump any day. I hear sometimes, one of the defense that people keep making for Biden is, why is it that everything is about Biden and nobody's talking about Trump? Why is the New York Times writing about Biden and not writing about Trump? Let me tell you something, friends. Everything about Trump is already baked in, priced in. You don't have to waste any time on him. We all know who he is. And let me tell you frankly, if Trump does a test and he aces it, as he likes to claim, the great genius aces it, he would never get my vote. If Trump comes across as being the most competent person on the planet to run America after after January 2025, 28th of January 2025, I couldn't vote for him. So don't have to worry wasting time because most people know who he is already. I would say most, but let me just qualify that and say many. They know who he is already. Why waste time on him? So it is kind of disingenuous in a way when people come and say, oh, you're not talking about Trump. But he may just, because let's say, Biden really has a problem. And come October, he suffers a setback in whatever way. Can we scramble enough to get somebody, let's say, behind Kamala, who has a different set of problems, and we have to deal with that at another time, to run and beat Trump? So the question is, in the minds of many people, it's not so much about by just being an old person. It's about him being able to beat Trump. And if he has cognitive issues that people are concerned about, whether he's going to be able to do it. And this is a real question for people, and that is why I don't like the idea of the party circling the wagons around President Biden and giving the impression that everything is all right. People want to know that he's really all right. And the kind of evasive answer that he gave to Stephanopoulos when they asked him the question about the medical evaluation was such a poor, attempt at evasion. Because it doesn't answer what is in the minds of so many people. If you had said, okay, well, I'll do that, and however it turns out, because listen, man, you have, like I said, you're on the mountaintop. Nobody can undo what you've done. You've been one of the most consequential presidents. Go home and rest. Go home and rest. You've done your bit. What more are you trying to prove? And you may end up allowing this man to slide through like he slid through on Hillary. You can't afford that. That is a basic question. And this is what, and this is the basic question that the soothsayers are not facing up to. It's not about what the man has done. Yeah, we know what he has done, but that is all in the past. You're looking in the rearview mirror. Trump is leading Biden in many of these swing states that are crucial to the electoral college vote counts. Every time he does something outrageous, he seems to score because people are not settled in their minds that Biden can really do it. And that is the humbug in the room. That is the thing that is on people's minds. And it's not going to go away. Those who, of that 70%, even if it has come down to 60, who think that they cannot put Biden in, whatever they have thought is already well baked into their minds, and it's not going to go away. So this idea that they can, you can just ignore that, what a large constituency of people are saying, doesn't cut it because you need their support. You know how I see the electorate, it's cut up into three parts. There is one part for the Republicans, and I would say, I'm going to, for lack of a better scientific judgment, I'm going to say 30% Republican, 30% Democrat, and 30% independents and others. Sometimes people, like I heard Biden said at one point that a lot of people turn up, a lot of people are there. Yes, at any given point in this country, anywhere you go in this country, you can always get a crowd, just like Trump can get a crowd. Because if 1/3 of the people are backing you, which is about probably 30 or 40 million people that are solidly in your corner, you're going to get a crowd. That doesn't mean anything. But it's not that 1/3 that you need to convince. Those of us who have already baked in the fact that, boy, even if we have to carry you to the, let me not say that. So we're not the ones to convince. Because, you have us. Because there's no way we could vote for Trump. And there's no way we would stay home and allow Trump to slide through. Now, that 1/3. But Trump has his 1/3 too. So in this other 1/3 over here, the question is, who can break through? And I have a strong feeling, again, without any kind of scientific analysis, that most people that many people who are in that, who are in of the view that is too old and not competent to go forward, and who the polls reflect that view, that 1/3, I think many of the people are over there. They're the ones you need to convince. So don't worry about the Democrats who are in your corner and who are buttering you up and make you feel good that everything is all right. No, that 1/3 can't get you in. You need to pull from this other 1/3 over here. Those who are committed one way or the other. The never Trumpers who would really want to vote against Trump, but who may stay home because you are there. The independents and others over here, they're the ones you need to convince. You don't need to convince the 1/3 Democrats. So you can't ignore them. If you want to have them on your side, you got to be more open to them, more transparent to them. Because let me say this, friends, Let's say it in a way of closing. For me, I am no political scientist, but for me, it is a cardinal principle of political campaigning that you cannot win power on the backs or on the back of a reluctant electorate. Let me say that again. You can never win power on the back of a reluctant electorate. So if this 1/3 of the independents and so on that you need are reluctant based on the fact that they're not too sure where you stand medically, it doesn't matter what you say. It doesn't matter how much you dig in your heels. It don't matter how much you try to do things to convince them. They're already baked in. As a matter of fact, many of them no longer are listening to you. And therein lies the problem for the Democratic Party. They want to see somebody that they can rally around, because they have formed the view long before the debate that you're not the man to do it. It's not that they hate you. It's not that they're against you. It's not about any elite business. It is about beating Trump for them. As for your 1/3, your 1/3 that are loyal to you aren't going to abandon you. And many of them are doing you a disservice, telling you certain things. But at the very least, man, clear the ear and let us see some kind of medical record. Don't worry about us even seeing Trump, to tell you the truth, because we'd never vote for Trump. So whether I come with, like I said, him ace it as a genius or not, it's immaterial, frankly. And you need to get over here and get to these people. That's where it's at. That's where it's at. For you can never win power on the back of a reluctant, and they're reluctant for the reasons I said it, on the back of a reluctant electorate. All right, I see that we're winding down to the remaining minutes of my presentation this evening. So let me go to an issue, and really by way of introducing it. And this has to do with, again, we're in the elections. It is an issue that is being called in the press. And not just being called, but being named, around as a matter of concern as we go to the elections. And it is something we're gonna perhaps have to spend some time on. And I'll have a discussion on with my go-to guys. The whole matter of Project 2025. How many people have heard about that? I have a strong feeling that many people have not heard about it. And that is why the Democrats especially are beginning to zero in on Project 25 in a way to take away attention from Biden's problems and to zero in and give Trump a greater attention than they have been doing. And that's not a bad thing. Certainly not a bad thing. Project 2025 is an over 900-page document that has come from a Republican, well, let's say a conservative think tank by the name of Heritage Foundation. They have been known to support Republican causes. They are deeply embedded, as it were, in the Republican Party. And what 2025 is, Project 2025, is a blueprint. They have sat down, studied, and come up with a blueprint that they want to use as the basis of governance if Trump gets in November or in January 2025. Friends, I've been looking at some of these things that they are suggesting, and we won't have the time this evening to talk about them. But one thing I notice about them is that they're very serious. The Republicans this time must not be taken for granted. They're very serious about what they're doing. They've sat down and they have come up with a way in which they're going to govern, how they're going to fire, come up with all kinds of tests to test the loyalty of people who are going to be coming into government. They're not going to just go in there and start chase people out of their jobs, but they're going to come up with certain forms, like you're applying for a job, for example, and you're going to have to write on that, answer certain questions that they have on that form as a way of testing you, how loyal you will be to the Trump administration. And if you're not, and they can just, if you answer in ways that they do not comport with what they think, you're out. And that's in the civil service. And don't say that they can't do it, because the executive has control, and Trump would be the, let's say, he would be the chief executive. The president is the chief executive, and he has control over that branch, the White House, and so many different agencies of government that he has control over. And it would permeate, this plan would go right through the length and breadth of the administration and the agents, Department of Justice, and they're even talking about doing away with the Department of Education. And another thing that I notice about this Project 2025 is that it is what you call very granular, meaning that it is well set out in terms of what they will do, in the nitty-gritty, the simple things that they're going to do. They spell it out, that there be no doubt. When it comes to women, men, if you have sisters, you have your wife, you have your daughters, you have your nieces, you have any woman at all associated with your life, you need to get up and protect them. Sometimes we hear that the woman should go out and vote, the woman should do this, but what about the men in their lives? In the abortion issue, for example, the men are largely silent as if it doesn't concern them. When you hear about women have to be moving from one state to the next in order to get some kind of help because they are bleeding out, literally, because of a miscarriage, and they can't get the help in their state because it's ruled by Republican governors. And they have to flee to one of the Democratic states that allow it, a procedure. That's what we're talking about. One thing about the Republican Party, they have no respect for women. And I don't see how any woman at all could vote for them. That alone, should register a vote against Trump and the Republican Party. Because we don't want them to control the Congress. Because they're just going to, gum up the works. But the men must come behind their women in these things and be champions. Don't just leave it to the women. And Project 2025 has all the contours of a misogyny, hatred of women. I don't know why the Republican Party seems to, let me not say that, friends. That is best said if I'm having a drink around with my friends. But why are they so obsessed with womanhood on the wrong side of the ledger? But anyway, that's another matter. But this blueprint that they have come up with is a very, very serious blueprint. I don't know, somehow it trickled out. The Heritage Foundation, they had it, and somehow somebody got wind of it. One of the news papers or one of the news organizations, and it is out there. So now that it is out there, Trump is disavowing it. He didn't know anything about it. All of a sudden, you can rest assured that if it didn't come out into the public, and thank God it did, because we get a good insight into what they're planning and what they're capable of if they should ever get in there. The kind of chaos and mayhem that will be in this country. You would, let me tell you something, man. And so now it has trickled out. Trump is backing out and say, I don't know. I don't know anything about it. And the number of the people who wrote the project, who were part of the project, were members of Trump's administration when he was there. And I'm sure if they bring one before him, I say, do you know this one? I don't know him. Just like he didn't know Putin. A liar. But every American who values his or her freedom must be concerned about Project 2025. And that's why we're going to spend some time going through it, because between now and November, critical time as to whether this country will survive as a democracy. You know, I think I said it to my wife that and I said it to a few other people too, that when Trump, if he does get in there, when he made the statement about I will be dictator from day one, you know, I have a very strong sense of what he's talking about. Because he can dismantle everything having to do with government in day one. But he will start the process. If he wins in November, there's one power that Trump has, apart from the power of pardon, and that is going to abuse right across the board. And if I have time, I can come back to that, where I think he's going to abuse the pardon power. But one power that he has that he will certainly abuse is the power of making executive orders. That's given to every president to be able to just come up with something that they think they should institute outside of the legislative process, and it is allowed by the Constitution. It can be challenged in court and sometimes shut down by the court, as has happened in many instances. But sometimes by the time you shoot it down, it has done its damage. And I think that that is one of the ways in which he's going to be dictator from day one. I can imagine he's going to have a stack of papers, you know, lots of documents piling up all the way above his head that he's going to use his executive order to put in place. We don't know what those things are going to be. When he just got in, the first thing he did was to do the Muslim ban. You remember that one? Well, I think in the first, it's just that I know he's not going to get there. But if he should get there, I can prophesy from now that the executive orders in the first 100-year days of Trump's presidency will be the most of any president. Think about that. It will be executive orders on steroids as he dismantles things and put in things in keeping with his dictatorial and autocratic impulses. And what strengthened this thinking for me, is what the Supreme Court did in giving him all this carte blanche thing about official and unofficial duties that they did not even define. He can see everything as an official duty. And what's going to stop him? What's going to stop him? Like I said, you can run it to the courts, but by the time the courts pick it up, and worse when it gets up to the Supreme Court, where those Republican justices, 6 of them are waiting to do his bidding. What do you think is going to happen? Think about it. I think I have about a few minutes that I can say something about the pardon powers that he's going to abuse. So not only will he abuse the executive orders, powers that he has, but he's going to abuse the pardon powers. Because if so many things are in the gray area in terms of what the Supreme Court has done, has said that the president can do, that he'll be king from day one, King Edward from day one. All his operatives in government, all the people that he appoints, all the people that are working for him, anything unlawful that they're doing, anything that does not comport with existing law, and they're breaking down these laws, breaking them. All that Trump has to do is to break it upon you. You break it upon you. You break it upon you. So you don't have to worry. Just go and undo whatever you have to undo. And you don't have to worry about it. Because there's a pardon here waiting for you. Even before you go to the court, you're pardoned. Just like Bush pardoned Cheney. Oh, you might be thinking that I might have been drinking something or smoking something. But think about it. Think about it. If he gets in there, and then now, because all his aides would have already in the interim, the 3 months before November, in November, December, January, before he takes official office, and all of these documents are piled up and compiled and ready for his signature from day one. But for the first 100 days, look for that thing, pardon powers, executive order powers, on steroids. America, you have been warned. But it's just that I won't be proven to be right. Because of course he won't get there. But these are the things that they're thinking about, and every American must be aware of these things. Because all that you're going to have in the country is chaos. And if the Project 2025 gets underway, because in that too, it has a detention of the immigrants and all these sort of things that they propose to do. This country will become virtually unlivable. Even for those who thought that they could support Trump and live a good life. It will become unlivable for them as well. So that's where I am with that, and I leave it at that. Right, because we've come to the end of our program for this evening. And I hope that I have helped to distill some of the issues, probably proposing things that you might not be hearing from others, from the news media, but helping us to think through things that we can come to a better position. And if you agree with me, you can just drop me a line. Send it to stead, STEAD 6655 at AOL.com. That's my email. You can send it to me there. or you can find me on WhatsApp and just send me any question that you may have. As you're watching the channel, I ask you to subscribe and like if you like what you're hearing. I'm sure you do. But most importantly, share. Just click on the share icon and send it to others. Let the word go out. I alone just here talking to you is one thing. But if you think that it merits getting to a larger audience, you got to help me to get it out there. Share what I'm doing, what I'm saying, so that others can know of it and join in, and we can have a brigade going into the elections of like-minded people who want to ensure that Trump doesn't make it to the White House. It is our solemn duty and our solemn obligation to ensure that the Republican Party is kept from power. And you may call me partisan. I'm an independent, but you may call me partisan, and that's all right. But when democracy is under threat, I know where I have to stand up, because I have to do it for my grandchildren, not even so much for my children who are big and grown and have been given an education and can stand on their own. They can live under Trump and fight their way through, but the poor grandkids shouldn't be subject to what I see children are subject to in other parts of the world. Gaza, Ukraine. Up to today, Putin bombed a hospital in the Ukraine and killed off many children. What a wicked, let me keep that. So friends, let me thank you for joining me this evening. It was great having your company. And I pray that you'll have a good night as you go to your rest, and you have a good waking in the morning. So take care of yourselves and take care of your family. And whatever you do, all good. Bye-bye.